Hey, 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 everybody. It's Tanya Smith here with Get Noticed with Video and Stream Like a Boss TV. So I am, as always, thrilled and humbled that I get to be here with you on a Thursday talking about things to do with leveraging on-camera video content. So what we love to talk about is how to help coaches, consultants, and course creators really embrace your face so that you can serve more people, you can stand out online, you can sell more of your services, all with live video. I am really, really excited that I get to talk about the topic that we're going to cover tonight. As a matter of fact, what we're going to dive into has to do with something that many of you, if you've made a decision to do streaming, have probably already made a decision about. You made a decision that you were going to have guest interviews. And if you're doing guest interviews, then there's a couple of things you really need to consider in lieu of you just doing the solo thing. So there are some things that I really had to kind of go and refresh myself about in doing guest interviews because it's different when it's not just you. And I see some of my folks in the house, so let me go ahead and say hello. If you're new to the show, I want you to type in hashtag newbie. But if you're an OG and you've been with us before, like Mr. JP High Tech in the house, JP High Tech Reviews, follow him on YouTube, y'all. And also my friend, the marvelous Marcia Baker. Marcia, I love the new photo that you have put up. Let me go ahead and make sure that I'm getting your comments there. Let's pull that up. I love the new photo, ma'am. I said something on your Facebook. So she is a hashtag OG. If you're a hashtag OG, pop that in the comments. And if you're new to watching, I want you to type in hashtag newbie. All right, so here's what we're going to do in just a few short seconds. I will be sharing a really quick promo video. And when I come back, we're going to do this deep dive into some tips. The topic for tonight is 3 mistakes to avoid when you're doing live guest interviews. It's so important to really kind of pay attention to the things we're going to cover because, like I said, I got a real dose, a refresher recently when I decided to go back into the space of inviting guests. When I first started out several years ago, yes, you're welcome. When I first started out on video, especially with live streaming, I was just only going solo. In fact, I've gone solo for most of the time that I've been doing this the last couple of years. But years ago, when I started doing a podcast called Snack Size Marketing, which some of you will remember, I actually had guests all the time. So I had a flow going and I had to kind of get back into the flow. That's the reason why we're talking about this tonight. All right, so I will be right back. I'm going to give you a chance to go get your favorite cup of water or whatever you prefer at this time of the evening. Get your notepad and your pen and take some notes. When we come back, we're going to talk about 3 mistakes that you want to avoid when it comes to doing live guest interviews. All right, I'll see you in a second. Alrighty, folks, again, I'm Tanya Smith with GetNoticedWithVideo.com and Stream Like a Boss TV. And once again, I'm thrilled and honored that I get a chance to be here with you tonight to talk a little bit about another live streaming video topic. So tonight's topic is going to focus on the idea of things that you want to avoid when it comes to guests, okay? Because when you're going solo, why does this matter? When you're solo and you're doing your own thing on video, it is super easy for you to simply just kind of, I guess, come off at the hip. So you can say, hey, you know what? I decided I'm going to change my topic and I'm going to focus on this. Even though I had plan A in place, now I'm going to talk about plan B, and that works for you. You don't have to worry about someone showing up on time because you're the one that needs to show up. And if you decide to change schedules, you can do that. You can create your script and kind of do it on the fly, as I kind of mentioned already. You can really just control the entire scene and not worry about paying attention to others, right, as it relates to your show. But when you have guests, when you're interviewing a guest, you have to make sure that you have all the things in place so that they feel good about the show, so that you feel good about the flow and how things are going to go, so that they feel welcome. And not only they feel welcome, but also, and I see that note, so no winging it, no. Now, there's a little bit of winging it that you can do, so I'll talk about that too. But you definitely need to be prepared. You need to prepare a little bit more when you have guests. And honestly, there are a lot of people that actually use or have a show format where they actually have guests each and every week. I have chosen not to do that. That's not my preference for a number of different reasons, which we'll kind of dig into a little bit. But the main thing I really want to focus on for you tonight is really just kind of walking you through those things that you want to watch out for. And JP knows because JP actually interviews a lot of guests, and he has some very high quality superstar guests on his show. So it's handling people with care and making sure that they know that you value them, you value their time. All of those things do matter. It is a lot of work. Oh, that's RK3 in the house. What's up, Robert Kennedy the third? Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And you know too, RK, because you have a show, if I remember correctly, I don't think it's every week, but I know it's pretty frequent. And I know also my buddy Stephen Hart also has shows where he has a panel style show. He has one where he's kind of the talking head, and then he has another one where he's just doing a single guest interview. But in any of those cases, they do require more work, in my opinion, than if you are just the solo person. If you're just the person who is on screen and you're the only one, you can do a lot of finagling or winging it, as you put in the comments. So here's the three things that I want to talk about. And what I'll do is I'll share the point, and then I'll kind of try to break it down and give you a little bit more detail. Yes. It's time to enjoy Stream Like a Boss. Come on with it. Look, so JP is going to be one of my guests, and RK3, don't be surprised when you get an email showing up, because really soon, bruh. All right, so let's talk about this. The first thing I want to share. When you're thinking about what not to do, okay, mistakes that you can make. The first tip is to not make the interview all about you. It is so easy to do, y'all. It's so easy. And I'm sharing this because as I was kind of reflecting recently on the different guests that I've invited and that I've been partnering up with for some of my shows here, I was very conscientious about that. I was hyper conscientious about that because I've been doing a solo show for so long that it's easy to get caught up in just, explaining and giving further context to the questions that you're asking. But the focus should not be on you. The focus should be on your guest. Your guest is the one that you're highlighting. Your guest is the celebrity of the day, right? And the reason why that's so important, again, is because the better you treat the guests that you have, the more likely you're going to have amazing, incredible guests coming forward in the future. And not only does it make you look like the hospitable, educated person who's asking the intelligent questions, but you're also giving that person some light to shine. You're spotlighting them so that you can make sure that you're giving a little bit of your of whatever your shine is and your glow is on your show to that guest that you've invited. And I just feel like that's so important because what I've seen, which is the opposite of what I'm saying, is when you have someone who is the interviewer, they bring on a guest and they end up just kind of asking the person a question, and then they turn the whole focus back on them. And that's really, yeah, exactly. I love it. So see that note right there? Great host can uplift average guests into great guests. So, one of the things that you want to make sure of is that you don't make the interview all about you. Now, how do you go about doing this? That's the question. The question is, how do I do this in such a way where I am being gracious, but I'm also looking as though I'm prepared? So, first and foremost, I would always suggest making sure that you have a method and an approach to collect their bio. You want their biography so that you can study it, so that you can speak to it. And if you've had personal interactions with them, then you want to talk about that too. You're going to probably have a set of questions, which we'll talk about next. But more often than not, what I'm finding is that I kind of reach back into my memory bank about interactions that I've had with that person. And I can pull from that knowledge of them, of their family life, of their experiences, and I can ask better questions, questions that really matter, questions that draw out something that's amazing that they have to share, right? So to the point that was made earlier, that great hosts can uplift average guests into great guests, that is so true. If you've taken the time to get to know more about your guest. Now, what I fell into the trap of quickly, I'm going to be honest and I can be transparent with you. What I fell into the trap of when I started doing guest interviews again is I fell into the trap of just, getting so excited that I invited the person and I was like, hey, I don't even really know them, but I've seen their videos, right? And I actually had one of my guests very subtly kind of pulled me back a little bit. And he said, why don't we have a little bit of a coffee chat ahead of time? And when he said that, I went, oh, dope. Right? Yeah. The reason why it's important to get to know the people that you're going to be bringing on, at least, even if it's on a surface level, you know a little bit more than simply the bio that's on their website, is because, again, that gives you a foundation for you to work from, that gives you something that's a little bit more fun and interesting when you're having the conversation and you're asking questions. Because, again, you probably have taken notes. If you had that little coffee chat ahead of time, or you've met the person beforehand, whether it's in person or in a virtual Zoom call, it doesn't matter. But then you have a little bit more personality and personalization that you can put into the questions that you're asking. They're not just these standard questions that just show up for everybody, right? And that gives you a much more impactful interview. So yes, I love this. So RK3 said this: even though I don't always have a coffee chat, I always invite my guest about 20 minutes early so I can get to know them. Yes. So having that conversation in advance and ahead of time can give you a better preparation. It could lay a foundation for a more engaging conversation than simply just asking them the standard questions. So don't make the interview all about you. Make it about your guest and do what you can to really get to know them and understand what their gifts are, so that as you're tailoring the questions to them and to your interview with them, it is much more interactive. It's more fun for you and for them. So that's tip number 1. Let's talk about tip number 2. Tip number 2 is, kind of be a little bit more moderate. Okay, here's what I mean by that. The mistake is that you're going to the extreme one way or the other. By extreme, I mean that you have prepared so many questions and you're trying to get through all of them, that you leave yourself no room for flexibility. You leave yourself no room to go a little bit more in depth so that you can really ask those follow-up questions that matter, that probably somebody in your audience is wanting to ask too. So there's a couple of things that I reminded myself about that have gone over very well with the recent guests that I've had. One, yes, I absolutely prepare some questions in advance. Probably around 5 or 6 I'll have that are standard questions, and I share those questions in advance with the guest, okay? I share those questions in advance, but I always try to give them a little bit of an out, and I say, hey, depending on how you answer some of these, what I may do is do some follow-up or kind of go a little off topic if we need to do a deeper dive. And going into an interview, you really want to have a sense of curiosity. It's not just about a checklist mentality and getting through the questions. It's about, I really want to understand the responses and the answers that the person on the other side of the table is giving me. What is it that they meant when they said this, right? So you're not just anticipating ahead, but you're also listening closely to the responses that they're sharing so that you can do the follow-up that's needed. And you can also be scanning through the chat to see if your live video guests in the chat are paying attention. And if they have questions, you want your live guest, the person that you're interviewing, you want them to be able to respond to that too, because that is part of, and that's why we're focusing on the idea of live video guests tonight, is it can be a little bit different. It's a lot less produced. Sure, you can go back after the fact and produce it, but when you are doing live interviews, anything can happen. You know this if you were with me last week, and our special guest, her internet completely crashed, and it was doing great beforehand. We had both tested out everything, made sure that she was at a good speed, etc., and just completely crashed. So what you want to do is to make sure that you are prepared, but not so prepared to where you become inflexible, okay? And you don't know how to respond to things that happen. Give yourself a little grace and give your guests some grace too. So be moderate. Don't be too extreme to where you've got these questions that you just have to ask every single one, even though question number 4 was already answered in the response that was given for question number 1. Don't get so inflexible that you can't pivot and change course. But at the same time, don't wing it to the point to where you have nothing to ask because you didn't even prepare questions ahead of time. And the person's just kind of going off on a tangent and you can't bring them back in because you really didn't have a path for them to run on. You want to stay somewhere near the center if you can. Be prepared because it's digital, y'all, and anything that happens online can go wrong. So just give yourself some grace on that, which brings me to mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 is not having a backup plan. You need to have a backup plan, y'all. You got to have a backup plan because if you don't, and something like I mentioned goes wrong with my guest that I had last week, right? If I didn't have a backup plan, or what if they don't show? What if they never show up? You thought you vetted the person. You thought, hey, this is someone who, I think I can trust to be a person of their word, a person of character that's going to show up when they said they would. What happens if there's an accident? What happens if there's something that, an emergency that they need to tend to? You need to have your backup plan as to what you're going to do. Will you still go and move forward with the interview, or not interview, but with the live stream for that evening? Can you come up with a backup topic? Do you need to call in a favor to a friend? Look, actually, Stephen Hart and I, we did an interview a while ago, and I remember we did the entire interview. It was awesome. It was almost an hour long, and it was so much fun, and it did not record. And I was devastated. Well, my backup plan was he and I got back on and did another interview later. We just did it on our own, but recorded that and then put that back out into the live feed. So just kind of think it through. You're not going to be able to think through every single possibility, but you can think of some things. You can have some things in place. So hello, Miss Yvette. What's up, lady? If you have questions about anything I'm talking about, feel free to ask. And I will tell you that I've got some superstar interviewers here who I see as people who mentor me in this space: Robert Kennedy III, JP High Tech Reviews, both on YouTube, LinkedIn, everywhere you can think of. So feel free to ask questions and I'll share it with them. If I can't answer the question, I'll get their answers. But yeah, I think that the most important thing is to have a plan. Okay, so I wanted to show you a couple of things because I'm always asked about my tech and kind of what I've set up. So I'm going to do a really quick demo and I'm going to show you a little bit of something. Remember, I mentioned the whole idea of making sure you're prepared. So one thing I had to think through when I started doing interviews again is I wanted to think through, how can I create a process that makes it easy for my guest to show up? How can I create a process that shares with them exactly what they need to know as far as questions, so that I can actually get their bio, so that I can get their headshot, so I can create, promotional images in advance? How do you gather all of that? So I'm going to kind of walk you through very high level my current process, just so you can kind of get some ideas. Yes, okay. So this is a question from Miss Yvette. When you're giving a shout out on one of your videos, how do you word it? You know what? I don't know if I have a solid answer for that, because it depends on the person and it depends on my mood. If I'm going to give a shout out on a video, and I'm assuming we're talking about guests, since that's the topic. If I was going to give a shout out, or I was going to ask my guest to give a shout out to someone else, it's really, again, it's personal. It just depends, Yvette. I don't know how to answer that particular question. Typically, when I shout out, you've heard me do this actually multiple times, even tonight. I've done so for RK3 and for JP High Tech, because they both are like my brothers. Like, they're people that I trust and I love. And so anybody that I see that pops up here in the feed, and even on Fan Fridays when I'm sharing, a thought or a shout out to someone that I've worked with during the week, the way that I tailor what I say is going to depend on the person and how I feel about them. And if there's a, nickname, or there's something that was special about the experience that I had with them, I'm going to include that in the wording. So I don't know that I have a standard on that one. But yeah, ask me some more questions in the chat and I'll come back. If there's more context you can add to your question, I'll come back and I'll make sure I respond to that. Okay, I'm going to show you my screen real quick here. I'm going to show you that this is my actual website at Get Noticed with Video. And in my Get Noticed with Video site, I actually have a page that is designed just for my guest. So when I've invited someone to become a guest on my show, which I do have a standard template, an email template that I use. And so I send them the invitation and tell them why I'm inviting them, tell them a little bit about the show, and ask them if they'd like to know more. Well, then they're able to come to my website and to the page that I send them, and they're able to learn more about some of the general topics that I'm going to cover. And they'll know what the process is for getting approved. And the reason why I do have an approval process in place, y'all, is because what can happen is you can have people that just happen upon your site and happen upon your page, and not everybody is meant to be a guest for you, right? So I've had people, for instance, that have asked me to be a guest, and I'm very particular about that because I want to make sure that it is someone who has what they do is complementary to my business, and vice versa, that I can complement what it is they do and what they talk about. Good evening, Miss Marie McCoy Zimenoff. It's wonderful to see you here, lady. Awesome sauce. So yeah, it's important to make sure that whether you're a guest on somebody else's show or you are inviting guests, that you have a process. So I do have this process in place. And so what I've done is I basically laid out for them samples of different interviews that I've done right here, right? A short bio, frequently asked questions. So all of the information that my special guest may need to know is going to be in this form. The next thing that happens is if they are interested, right? So I've sent them the email invite, and if they're interested, they're going to complete a registration form. And so I have noticed that all of this stuff is well branded. It's easy to read through. It's very organized. That's just my flow. That's the way I like to work. You may do it a little bit differently, but some of the same components may still be there. But inside of the registration form, and I'm not going to go through all these questions, but there are a couple of different pages. What I'll do there is I will ask them information about them. So I'll ask them info about their abbreviated bio so that I can make sure that I study that in preparation for the interview. I'll ask them to upload a headshot. I'll ask them for their handles for Instagram or Facebook or wherever they like to play on social media. And I even have a page that asks them about the tech that they use. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that they're going to show up shining, that they're not going to come in and have like really bad technology. And here we are talking about video and they're not up to speed on video. So I want to make sure that we're helping them to really show up and be showcased in a way that makes them look brilliant and makes us look brilliant too. So all of that is inside of the form. And then at the end of the form, once they filled that out, there's a link to the page for my booking where they can go ahead and choose the date that's available. Now, one more thing that I want to mention when it comes to booking a live video guest, you know, RK3 said this earlier. He said, woo, doing it every week is a lot. And that is a lot. And I choose not to do that. It's too much. So what I try to do is to have 2 time slots a month that I'll allot just for guest interviews. That way I'm not overwhelming myself and I'm able to give time and attention to that guest so that they have everything they need. Now, one thing I didn't mention is this. After they have booked their calendar, so they've gotten, you know, the calendar or the appointment that's been scheduled so that we know that's when we're going to meet. Then I also have an instructional page that I share with them. I'll share with you what that looks like real quick here. I have a checklist that I've created so that not only have they kind of gotten an idea of what I'm looking for in the registration, but now once they've been approved, because I do approve it in between this process and actually sending them confirmation, yes, your date is booked, then I'm also sending them, let me pull it up, a guest preparation checklist, okay? So hopefully this is giving you some ideas as I'm kind of talking through what I do. Maybe this will give you some ideas of how you can think strategically about how you do this. So in my guest prep checklist, what I do is, and this is after they've been confirmed for a booking date and they've, you know, filled out their registration, I have their bio and the headshot, they've been approved. Now they have a checklist that they get to save. I'm so glad you like it, Yvette, because hopefully this will help give you some ideas as you're thinking about your own, whether it's a podcast or a video show, whatever that might be. But these things help you to have a streamlined process, but it also makes things a lot easier to manage because it's a lot when you're adding guests to your show. So I have a checklist that gives them information about the questions I'm going to ask, what's going to happen before the live, how to be prepared during the live, where they can join me, how to get support and help if they need to change the date. And then I also have a little video here at the top, right here, excuse me, where I'm walking them through the information that's on this page because people are different types of learners. Some people like to learn through video and some people like to read. So both of these are pretty much the same information. I just do it in a quick video, a 5-minute video format here. The last thing that I'll show you is I actually also have a PDF. So I've got a little checklist that they can print out that has information for them as well to tell them how to rock the interview. So that's my process. And I thought I'd share that with you in addition to some of the tips on how to avoid those 3 mistakes. So I hope that that is helpful. Now, again, everybody's going to do things differently. You absolutely do not have to do your interviews exactly the way that I do. I'm just sharing with you my process and how I think because, and of course, my stream bosses will know this. And Miss Michelle, it's good to see you, lady. They know that I think very systematically, and it helps me to be able to juggle more than one thing at a time. And when you're juggling and managing guests, and you don't have a huge team or you're just a team of one, then you definitely need to be organized to the point that you have things in a flow. Even if it's not all automated, there's still personal touches in every part of the process that you just saw me walk through, right? But at the same time, parts of it are automated such that I can be hands off and go do other things and work with my one-on-one clients or work in the academy or, be working with other guests while that person is getting up to speed going through my checklist. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them here in the chat. I know this was more of an educational or like a little mini training night. But next time, I think we have a very special guest coming up. I need to look at my calendar. JP High Tech actually is going to be in the house not too long from now. I think you're coming in September, bro. So I'm going to look for that date. It is almost the end of August, y'all. And with it being near the end of August, I'll be preparing and publishing the calendar for the month of September, which, by the way, is a very special month for me because all the ladies in my household, in the Smith house, have birthdays, including myself. So we're going to be super busy. The other thing that we're excited about is hubby's going to be home. So we'll get a chance to spend some time with him. It's been a minute. So very excited about the month of September. If you've got something really exciting happening in September, I want you to put that in the chat or at least give me a woot woot. And I see one woot woot right there. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, September is going to be amazing, incredible. And we also, for those of you who are stream bosses, by the way, we're going to have our special guest training on TikTok. So Jada West is going to be coming to hang out with us and to teach us a little bit more about TikTok. Yes, awesome sauce, awesome news. So look, the other thing that's happening at the very end of September that I think you all need to know is that we're going to open up Stream Bosses Academy. So for those of you who have been kind of sitting like, when is she opening it up? I'm opening it up at the end of September, y'all. So get ready to join us and be a part. We have our amazing Creator Day this weekend, which is always fun, where we get to catch up and do some co-working. Yes, thank you. Yes. I'm really super excited about all of the things that are happening over the coming weeks. And we have more to come. I just didn't bring my little list. So I don't have it all in front of me, but I promise I will next time, y'all. Thank you for showing up. And let me do my recap of all of the tips that we gave tonight, specifically the 3 mistakes to avoid. We want to do a recap of that for you. One thing, by the way, let me say this because I almost didn't say it. I almost forgot. The other day when we did office hours, I mentioned to you about YouTube and the fact that YouTube has given us the ability to be able to take a live stream and to clip it right from directly inside of YouTube. So I did a little demo for the folks that were in the Facebook group and for our Stream Bosses Academy. It's really easy to do, but if you look in your YouTube under a video, and it doesn't have to be your video, because I actually did this with Nick Nimmin the other day. I cut out a little part, and StreamYard too. I cut out a little clip of something that I wanted my community to know about and to hear. And then I shared a link to that specific clip. When you share the link to the clip, it ends up taking people to hear that specific clip. So let's say it's a 30-second clip. But at the bottom of the clip, it also redirects them if they want to watch the full video. And that has opened up so many possibilities for YouTube, y'all. So think about it. If you're doing a live stream like I do, and you have little clips that you're sharing that are teaser clips, and you're sending people back to your full YouTube video and to your channel, that is an amazing opportunity. So we're going to be talking about in Stream Bosses in the month of, I believe it is in September. Our next training is going to be focused on YouTube and TubeBuddy, and we're going to talk about repurposing those clips and a few other things too. So there's just so much, so many things coming up, y'all. So many projects. And I'm very excited and honored next week, by the way, that I get to go and speak with Texas Women's University. So I'm going to be delivering a presentation and a workshop on how to use video. That's just one of so many things. I can't just go through a whole list. So the number one thing for you is we're going to walk through this recap. The number two thing for you is I want to make sure that you come back and stay in tune, because we do have a calendar that's going to be jam-packed for September. I'll publish it either this weekend or sometime late next week. Let's recap these 3 mistakes so we can get ready to wrap it. The first one is when you're doing guest interviews, so when you're starting to think about bringing on guests into your show, don't make it all about you. You may be used to that if you're doing kind of a solo show, whether it's a solo podcast or a solo video show. You may be used to that, but keep in mind that you have another person or persons, if you're interviewing multiple people at once, that you need to shine the spotlight on. It's time to shine that spotlight that's been on you onto someone else. And that's a win for you both and for both of your audiences, by the way. Number 2 is make sure that you're prepared, but also flexible. So don't be inflexible when you're creating your questions. Don't be inflexible when you're putting together the show flow, because things may not work out as planned. And you want to make sure that you are putting yourself in a position to be able to really leverage the questions and the responses. You got to be listening to what the person on the other side is saying so that you can ask the follow-up questions, right? Do the deeper dive when you need to. So be a little bit more flexible, not inflexible. And then number 3, make sure you have a backup plan, because if something can go wrong from a technical standpoint, it will go wrong. It's just the law of technology. So make sure that you have a backup plan, either for the tech itself and or if your person, your guest, does not show up. If there's something that may prevent them from joining you, or maybe they cancel last minute, or they just never show up on time and you're sitting there kind of twiddling your thumbs, you want to have a backup plan. Be thinking about what you're going to do in lieu of that guest sitting on the other side. That is it. We're going to do a short version of our show tonight. I want to thank you once again for being here, and thank you so much for saying happy birthday month coming. And yes, a lot of exciting things in the month of September. So next week I'll have a lot more energy. Today I kind of felt a little low energy. I wonder if you felt that too. But it's only because I haven't gotten a lot of sleep this week. I am working on it. So I promise I'll be much more high energy next time. Either way, I still hope I landed, that some of the ideas I shared landed with you in a good way, especially the process that we talked about. Hopefully that gives you some little nuggets and ideas that you can take away and use as you're building out your own guest interview process, especially for your live videos. All right, everybody. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will be talking to you that are Stream Bosses this weekend. And for those of you who are inside of our Facebook group, our LinkedIn community, our Twitter space, and other spaces where we play, just know that I am sending you nothing but positive thoughts and good prayers to be safe. And yes, you have a great evening as well. Be safe and sound, and I will see you next time in the stream.